Welcome from the eye of the hurricane. Today is September 7th, 2017. And what did I say?
No,
17th? Well, I'm just... Yep. Oh, you were helping me with it. Yeah, if I need help with the date, we're in trouble here. Today is September 7th, 2017, and this is Mastermind call number 142. We really have a treat for y'all today. This is our first Thursday of the month Ask an Expert call, and we've got a very interesting, very exciting expert to share with you today. When Gary is done speaking, we are going to turn this into a regular call. So if you do have a question, comment, success, something you need help with, just hit *6 and hit 1. We've got one person in the queue now, and I'm sure there will be more later. Tim, are you on the call? All right, Tim is not here. I'll just start a little bit myself with some housekeeping. I've had a number of you ask me about the hurricane and everything. None of us are evacuating. 2 of the partners are in the path of the storm, and our partner that has all the data is not. So the data is safe, and our coach is safe in Virginia. So regardless of what happens with this hurricane, the company goes on, and your data will be good. You'll keep getting your leads. We don't really expect any interruption in service. Fortunately, we're scattered across the country, and we're going to keep this thing going. So just wanted to share that with you. Chad, before we turn it over to Gary, I've had a number of people ask me about the next Mastermind call. Would you go ahead and share those dates? I mean, the next Mastery call. The next Mastery call, please, for September.
So a couple things on training. So yesterday, if you missed it, we had our September role play call. That is archived both on Facebook and in subscriber portal. And Probate Mastery is scheduled because I'll be at the Explode conference in Maryland next week. I'm doing a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So Probate Mastery starts on September 13th. And it's the 13th, 14th, and 15th. And the sessions will run from 2 p.m. to whenever we finish, usually 3 to the latest will be 4 p.m. I leave a 2-hour window. So you've got next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. If you want to sign up, you can see that I sent an email yesterday with the sign-up link, or you can go to in subscriber portal on the left, click on Probate Mastery under Education and Training. And that also has a course outline and kind of a video on what you can expect from the course if you're not familiar with Mastery.
And those of you that have taken it, you're welcome to take it again. If you haven't, we chart our statistics. We're basically, one of the things we do, we're a data company, and we can tell you you're much more likely to be around and in the long term if you take that course. It really gives you that extra level of confidence. And Tim is here now. So, Tim, anything you want to share with the group?
No, nothing really important other than the fact that we're all, we sent some email out this morning to the folks that are potentially affected by this regarding their mailing and that sort of stuff. We're pushing all the mailing stuff that needed to get done and might go out Monday. We're pushing to Friday, and we'll monitor over the weekend, kind of see what happens and all that. And we're just watching and waiting and hoping that everything will be all right. And we're feeling like it will be. And certainly we appreciate all the folks who have reached out to us and expressed their concern about us, and we appreciate that. It always means a lot to know that we're cared about.
Amen. I share that sentiment. And I thought you were going to send the letters airmail during the hurricane, but I guess you'll wait till afterwards then.
It's just maybe a little too soon for that. I don't know. Maybe we just move on, Jim.
All right, we'll do that. Tom, anything you want to share with the group from a customer service perspective?
Just my normal, that if you need anything, please just send us an email at support@alltheleads.com, and we track those items, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can.
And just to reiterate, be as specific as possible. Either hit the contact us button on the website, or go to support@alltheleads and be very specific about what you need. That way, the right person will call you back the first time. And having said all that, this is our second monthly Ask an Expert call. That's a bit of a tongue twister. And Chad, would you go ahead and introduce our expert for the month?
Yeah, so guys, if you weren't with us last month, we had the founder of the American Society of Estate Liquidators. So we got to hear kind of from the estate sale industry ways we can be of value and they can be of value to us. And we'll continue the series on the first mastermind call of each month. This month, I'm really excited that we've got a great probate attorney that was referred to us from Roger Lisi, who you've probably heard on these calls. Gary DeWitt is a probate attorney in Arkansas. He's got an interesting story. He had a career in IT for 20 years, and after watching his family's ranch be probated for the third time, I think in 2010, he decided to go to law school and make a difference in this space. So I'm excited to not only just have a probate attorney, but one that seems to be have very closely matched business values as we do here and what we teach you guys. And Gary, I hope that was a good intro.
Well, thank you.
Anything else And Roger, I think, is on the line with us too, so we may hear from Roger too. So one of the things that we teach and often comes up on our role play calls and our mastermind calls, Gary, is we teach our agents to really focus on providing value to the personal representatives, the executors, but also to the attorneys, and really finding a way to build a referral network by becoming valuable to those agents. So what I'm really curious to hear from you is what has, in your past, what's been the most value that a real estate agent has really brought to you, and what do you see that we're coming up short on? Like, how can we be most valuable to you and the families throughout the probate process?
Yeah, the most value I see is, of course, maximizing the value of the home or multiple pieces of property for the family. You know, you may end up having to sell one parcel to improve another one, but it comes out overall with more money.
Then that really starts with understanding the whole situation and the potential of what you could do with the real estate, right?
Yeah,
so
I
kind
mean,
of being a transaction engineer.
Yeah, I'm working up an estate plan right now. It's got 6 small parcels in it, one with a house and 5 outlying. And in a situation like that, of course, you might sell one of the outliers to improve the home to get an overall up value for the entire set of real estate.
Yeah, and that's really in line with what we teach. So we try to get everybody to focus on the people, the situation, and the goals, then segue into real estate. And by understanding their goals and kind of their overall situation, you know what the potential is. For example, I had a guy here in Roanoke that his father passed away. He kind of stuck his head in the sand and ended up losing 3 of the 5 properties. And I bought one of the ones he had put down his last $5,000 at the foreclosure auction and couldn't close on the sale. And he called me 3 hours before the end of it. So by just meeting him that way, I took his position in the contract, and you know, he didn't lose that $5,000. I gave it back to him. But the other 2 properties that are going into foreclosure, I'm now helping him liquidate one to save the other. And it's really understanding kind of, you know, the big picture and looking at the whole situation and finding ways that you can really do things like that to unlock equity or save equity, rather than just saying, yep, go blow them out, right? One of the things that I think that I'd kind of like to talk to you about, what's the most frustrating part of working with real estate professionals, or what's the most redundant part of your job working with the families that we could take off your plate? Like, is there anything, like in the initial meeting, the conversations about real estate, getting estate sales prepared, do you feel like there's anything that we could do a better job at taking that part of the conversation from you and having it with the family, and you would feel like, you know, with Roger, you feel like he's definitely going to cover it as good or better than you?
Well, I can't think of anything. I've had such good luck here working with everybody, especially people like Roger that understand the probate process. I mean, the one conversation, again, is talking to the family. Families so often want to overvalue mom and dad's home, and it won't move. They need to understand that the market bears what the market bears and not what they want out of it. And that's a piece of the conversation. It's often difficult but needed.
Now, do you find that before you met Roger, were you having that conversation, or did
I
is
haven't
that something
sold
that,
a whole lot of homes out of probate. Actually, there's been more foreclosures lately, it seems like, than sales. And a whole long reason for that, but it would have taken more to improve the house for sale than when it got out and lost at foreclosure.
yeah, okay.
What I found, Chad,
Go ahead, Roger.
what I've found in some of the cases that I've been working is that one of the differentiators is that I provide is a broker's pricing opinion instead of a.
Hey, Roger, can you speak up a little bit or get a little bit closer to the phone? We're having a little bit hard time hearing you.
Okay, let me turn this volume up a little bit. There's a volume button on this thing somewhere. There it is. Can you hear me now?
Much better, thank you. Yep.
What I've found is I try to differentiate myself with attorneys by providing a broker's price opinion instead of a CMA, and with the permission of the attorneys, I do talk to the families about it, and I get a perception, as Gary has mentioned, that they have a different perception of what the value of the property is, and generally speaking, when I go and talk to the families about that, and Arkansas is a little bit different than some of the other markets. Gary, would you speak to the process of probate in Arkansas? I think you've got pretty much everything judicially supervised until the notification period's done.
Yeah, in Arkansas, whether or not there's a will, we have to file in court. With a will, once that period's up, we can follow, what the will says to do. If there's not a will, then everything has to go to the court. We have to ask for sales of everything. We have to prove pricing. We have to be very careful to do it right, or it can come back on us.
And what I've done during the notification process, if the family wants to start moving toward liquidation of the assets, is what I've found is that a broker's price opinion is a little more in depth with the comparables, because you get 3 comparables in there, and you show them all of them that have been in the general area. And you basically look at improvements to the property and what could be improved, and I provide an as-is price and with improvements price. And then it comes to the decision of how much is in the estate and whether or not the personal representative in probate wants to do that. Trusts are a little bit of a different horse of a different color, because there may be assets in the trust that would be able to get a higher net sales price and a higher bottom line proceeds to the estate with trusts. And the broker's price opinion addresses that a little bit more in depth than providing just a comparative market analysis out of the MLS or whatever you do, and then you're just basically saying this is the price per square foot for the houses in this area, and this is what the price per square foot is this, and you kind of guess what it's going to be going down a little bit. So I provide a lot of information, and frequently families. I've had one just recently. The third property in an estate that has said to me, they go in and say, well, this house is worth $130,000, and I said, well, let me walk through it again, and I'd already sold 2 properties in the estate, and I knew I'd funded about $100,000 into the estate, and as I walk through the house, I'm seeing holes in sheetrock and holes in doors, and there's a family member living in it, one of the heirs living in it, and open up one of the doors and look at the heating control system, heating and air conditioning control system. I see wires hanging out, and I said, is is there something wrong with the air conditioning? And he says, yeah, it doesn't work, but it's just a little switch in there. And so I snapped a photograph of that, and I updated my BPO, turned it in, and all of a sudden the family says, well, this is worth $130,000. And I said, well, on an as-is, it's worth about $98,000. And if you spend about $5,000 on it, doing a little bit of painting, you're looking at probably about $120,000, maybe $125,000. And the attorney can take that broker's price opinion that looks like an appraisal, but it is not an appraisal, and presents it to the judge and says, this is where my guy thinks it's worth. And then the family just sits there, and the judge says, whoa, there's a picture of a hole in the wall. And said, you got that fixed yet? And they make a decision on whether or not they're going to spend the money for the repairs or not at that point. And so that speaks to the difference that I make in working with the personal representatives and executors of the estate.
So you guys have found, I mean, it sounds like you work really well as a team, and I'm curious, Roger, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but so Gary, having an agent that's approaching this the way Roger is, like, what would it take for another real estate agent in your market to unseat him and gain your trust where you would rather send referrals to them? Because the point of the question is, everybody on this call wants to know how can we do a better job in, impressing and earning referrals from attorneys. So, like, what would it take? What could Roger do better, or what would it take for somebody for you to say, you know what, this guy's getting my referrals?
It would take a whole lot to unseat Roger as far as referring for sales of probate property. One thing Roger also does well is not only does he work with the attorneys, occasionally I just get an email or a phone call from Roger. Hey, how's it going? Not asking for business, just checking in.
Yeah. As an expert in the field, I mean, what would you say to a real estate agent in Sacramento, California that knows no probate attorneys, has just moved to that market, but is running their business like Roger? They're providing that level of service for the families, and they have the capacity to help a lot more families if they could get referrals. Like, what's the best way for them to build that relationship and trust so they can get to where you and Roger are?
Well, it helps, of course, if you have a proven portfolio of wherever you move from. If you're just getting into this, I really recommend trying to network and set up, 15-minute meetings with attorneys and just get to know them face to face.
Right.
Also allows you to screen them pretty quick if I want to work with these guys, but not these guys.
Yeah. That's what we found.
By the way, if anybody on the call has a question for the attorney, hit *6 and hit 1. And I know Tim had a couple questions. Go ahead, Chad. You had a follow-up?
I was just going to kind of reinforce what Gary said. What we've found across the country is, people who are sending mail or making phone calls aren't nearly as successful as the ones who walk in and ask for an appointment and really look the attorney in the eye and treat it like a real business relationship. That's what we found to be most effective.
And Gary, this is Tim. I was just going to ask a couple of questions kind of along the same line. If in order to, as you said, you mentioned, come in and get 15 minutes of an attorney's time, and we've talked about doing that too. Show up, knock on the door, introduce yourself, do what you can to sit in front of that attorney for a little bit. But what should they come armed with? Should they come armed with, here's a portfolio of the deals that I've done, here's a couple of cents, everything they can? What do you have time, as an attorney, what are you going to have time to look at and not just think somebody's coming in to overwhelm you, but what would be what's the right package for somebody to put together to basically get your attention?
I would put together like your two best deals, and I would always include an average deal or, hey, here's when things go bad, here's how I handle it.
Right. And what about, do you think it's important to do some testimonials and include those with it as well, maybe?
Wouldn't hurt. I usually don't pay much attention to those at first.
Okay.
If you're going to leave a packet of information, I would definitely have a testimonial sheet, maybe 3 to 5 if you're just starting out. maybe a couple of sheets if you've got some experience.
Okay. And the other thing I know that Roger and his partner have done is that they've, with our help, they put together a really good website with a lot of good information on it about probate. Is it helpful to have something like that when you're having that conversation, which shows he's serious about it and all of that, so that they've got something like that to refer back to?
I can't say I've ever been to Roger's website, so
you
can't
should
speak to what's on it. I should, but I've met with him I met with him in person, met him through a mailer, and was intrigued, and set up an appointment to meet him. And
so he sent you a mailing, and that got your attention, huh?
Well, it was actually one of the I want to sell your probate home mailings, and that got my attention.
Good. Well, that's
so
great.
one of the personal reps brought you the letter?
No, it came directly to me.
Okay, so you were representing one of the estates?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And in your market,
do you find that? Go ahead, Tim. Follow up.
I was going to say, in your market, do you find that you are one of a few attorneys that are really doing a lot of probates, or does everybody do one now and again, or are there people who specialize in it and are really good at it? In most markets, we find that there are a handful of attorneys who have multiple probates every month showing up in the records at the county. Is that true in your market?
It seems to be more true than not. Of course, here everybody will do one until they run into trouble, and that might be the last one they do.
Right.
Probate's a game of patience. Sometimes you wait months to get a document back so you can go down and to show the judge. And
right.
So
what things what have you seen that are pitfalls that if you've done this enough, just like you said, until they go wrong? What are the pitfalls that you might run into, so that if you could give our folks here are the things you need to look for something getting ready to go south on you? Anything that comes to mind?
If there's an inventory, pay attention to the probate filing if you can. If you start seeing a lot of filings back and forth, contest, you might want to stay away from that one for a while. I don't know if you want to get drug into the middle of a long contested probate. The other thing,
and where do they look for that? Tell me what to look for again.
In Arkansas, we have a website that you can just go to and for any probate or basically any case and pull all the filings. So we have a statewide website. But
right.
You're looking for people filing petitions that contest probate. The other gotcha is the person that goes down and files what's called a small estate affidavit here in Arkansas. And sometimes they don't fully understand the statute, and if somebody can come in and challenge that and take it to a full probate. So you might always want to double check it with your attorney to make sure that those are, clear and look good before you continue.
One thing I get asked a lot: what percentage of them need court? And I know it's different state by state, but what percentage of them need court approval versus a really well-structured will that that's just easy to close out? Is it half of them that need court approval, or more or less?
Well, here in Arkansas, everything technically requires court approval, will or not.
Okay.
The small estate affidavit technically is court approved. Most of the time you just file it and forget it. But
got it.
The will has to be admitted to probate and validated. If there's no will, of course, it's a long process.
I guess the question I was really asking then, in most states, if there's a will, it's relatively simple. If there isn't, you need court approval and can be drug out. What percentage of people what percentage of the states you see have a will?
Probably about 60%.
Yeah, that's what we hear nationwide. Okay, that's good. So everybody should have a will. If you have assets, you should have a trust. But by all means, have a will. It's going to make it a lot easier on your heirs.
Yeah, it does make it. It makes it easier, but not as easy as a trust or other probate prevention techniques do.
Would you
There you
define
go.
a small estate, Gary?
Say what?
Define a small estate.
In Arkansas, it's defined as a estate with a net value of under $100,000 and no debts and no outstanding Medicaid payments due.
All right. And I was just going to, if I'm not mistaken, Roger, when you first started with us a good, 9 months, a year ago, was this the first deal that you got from Gary, from the attorney, or was that a different attorney?
That was a different attorney. And that was a result of going out, and I'm a lot more comfortable going out than calling.
Gotcha.
And that was a different attorney that gave me the Harlan estate, and it was in trust. And she
gotcha.
asked me to do an appraisement on some property that the city had condemned for a road. And then I went out and looked at it, and I was aware of the Ripple Road extension, and I sit there and then I just realized that, holy cow, what's going on here? And I called her back and visited with her a little bit, and I said, Ripple Road extension is going through that. Yes, we're thinking of taking the city of Fayetteville to court. And I said, because of the condemnation price of the property that they're taking for the road? And she said yes. And then I knew immediately what I was dealing with. And I was dealing with the agricultural land that is being rezoned into residential land.
And that's going to turn into about an $8 million sale for you and multiple referrals. So, yeah, that was your first time you ever picked up the phone on a probate deal. Boy, that's a great story. Go ahead. Did you have another comment, Roger?
It was. You're right about that, but the most prickly thing I've found is the descendancy of property with another attorney that I've been working with, and the family has been passing it from one family member to another, probably about 2 generations, and I was approached by a buyer of the property who wanted to buy the property in downtown Fayetteville, and I went and the owner came to the office. We talked about it, and we decided that we looked at it and said, this property has never been probated. It's still in your father's name, who died 10 years ago, and we started looking at that. I went on to newspapers.com and Fayetteville Library looking up descendancies, and it turns out his grandmother only had 1/3 interest in 2 parcels of the 4, and it turned out to be that she was the second wife of the man that owned it, and he had a previous wife and had 2 children, 3 children from that, and all of a sudden it's a quiet title action instead of just a clear descendancy.
Gotcha.
And it's just basically, I need to go find something else to do.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. And if you're able to hang in there, we have 2 people in the queue, and we're going to turn this into our regular mastermind call from here in. You know, it's an open forum. Just hit *6 and hit 1. And if you have a question for Gary, if you're able to hold on, I understand. If you got to go, that's fine. But if you have a question for an attorney or for Roger or for Chad, myself, or any of my partners, just hit *6 and then hit 1. And let's go to the queue and see who's first up this week. Phone number ending in 2972. You're up first.
Hey guys, it's Jonathan from the Virginia area. How you doing?
Hey, Jonathan. Welcome.
Thank you. I've got a couple questions. First one for Gary. One of the things that I'm running into here in our market is we've got a lot of attorneys, and many of them have already been approached by many real estate agents. And so I'm getting the Heisman high five, so to speak, of leading with we can help with real estate. I'm curious, do you have any suggestions on what other things? Chad has spoken a lot of them, but I'm curious to hear from your perspective. What other ways could we help you as an attorney aside from the real estate that's attractive?
It's a good question. I have almost, well, we have a lot of realtors here, but not a lot of them are approaching the attorneys in this area. So I'm wondering if you're just in a hot spot. You might do good writing a pamphlet, the top 5 ways realtor can help your clients in probate.
Okay.
And try to get that in front of the attorneys.
And Chad, I know Chad, you've shared some ideas before of how they could be helpful to the attorneys. You want to highlight a few of them, either Gary or Chad? Chad, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I mean, in really competitive markets, one of the things that I suggest is, especially if you've been in real estate for a while and you have past clients, one of the best things you can do for your clients is to have them set up an estate plan and a long-term care plan.
Right.
And, sometimes that's having a trust. Sometimes it's just as simple as a will. But if you can introduce them to your attorney and have him work with your past clients, I mean, it's not necessarily probate related. But if you're giving that kind of value to the attorney, then they should reciprocate with giving you a chance to work with some of their clients.
Right.
Yeah, let me add in there, if you make the attorney look good and feel good, he'll be a repeat.
Good.
Yeah.
Got it. I appreciate it. Let me ask you this, Chad. I had a listing appointment last week, and one of the executors was asking me if we could help them with timeshares. They've got a timeshare in Myrtle Beach and a timeshare in Florida. I didn't know how to answer it. I told him I'd get back to him. Do you have any suggestions on that?
I do. So it's timeshare is complicated, and there are typically in each market you're going to find a resale broker, and you don't have a license. I'm assuming you don't have a license in South Carolina or Florida. So the best thing you can do is find a reputable timeshare resale broker and refer it to them, because they're going to understand the state laws, the local association, hopefully that particular association, like what's allowed in a resale, and they're going to know how to guide the folks way better than you ever would. And for no bigger than the commission potential is, there's really no sense in trying to beat that learning curve, unless one of the gentlemen that was on this call a few weeks ago was in Orlando. And, for him, it was a little different conversation because he's in a very timeshare-heavy market. And the advice I gave him was take a look at your own business model. And if you see yourself doing a lot of timeshare brokerage, it might make sense to start doing this if it's really, really common and that's the kind of business you want to do. But in your market, I would just refer them out and let the experts deal with it and, take your small referral.
Okay,
the best
good.
You can do.
Good. The next question I've got, one of the homes we're trying to list, we've got competition with 2 builders. We came in and they offered way more than we thought. I'm curious, do you have any suggestions on how to effectively compete with builders that are wanting to tear down a house and then just build a brand new one?
What's your end run? You trying to buy it or list it?
No, she was not interested in selling it as is. She wanted to list it. She was disappointed with the number that we gave her. She had a builder come in that offered her 50 more than we did, and then another builder that came in offered 75 more. Super surprised by the amount that they offered, but they did.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, the only way that I could say you could compete with that is, by getting her a higher price, and that might be by selling it on terms. So you could possibly sell it, assuming it's free and clear, you could sell it as a lease option or an owner finance deal. But it still has to appraise for that higher number. You don't want to put the buyer in a bad spot. So you can typically sell homes at a premium, especially in your market. Certain cultures don't really buy into the U.S. financial system, so they don't use bank financing to purchase homes. There's a lot of those people in Northern Virginia, so you may find a business owner who doesn't qualify for financing but still wants a nice home and willing to put work into it to give you a large down payment and then let her carry it first, and he'll pay a premium price for a house like that because there's so few of those in the marketplace. So if you're competing on price, it's usually a losing game. But if you show her a way to sell the house on terms to a lot of times those folks will put 20, 30, 40% down, and they'll pay off the balance in 2 or 3 years. It's just they're not qualified to participate in a conventional mortgage, or they don't want to. And oftentimes they're business owners, and they will generate the cash or find it from somewhere in the family in a year or two. That note will be paid.
Chad, are you doing that on a deed note and mortgage, or are you doing that for a contract for deed?
Well, I think in Virginia they're contract for deed, so we just do a note and a first deed of trust. And then with a lease option, when I do a lease option, I'll actually do a title search, roll the asset into a land trust in case something happens to the seller, and then there's a predetermined. We go ahead, we do home inspections, we do the appraisal, we do the title search, and then roll it into a land trust to try to mitigate risk as much as we can. And I've got about a 95% close rate on those, which if you're familiar with lease options nationwide, it's about a 15% success rate. And we've done 95% because we're really, really proactive and making sure we're putting the right buyer in the place and that they really want to buy a home and they really have the potential in the next 24 months.
That's great, Chad. Last question I've got for you. One of the pushbacks that I'm getting from one of the families that we're helping is they've got a friend of the family, 20 years, real estate agent, and I shared with her one of the things that you went over in the Probate Mastery about the uniqueness of the probate transaction. I'm curious, Can you fill that out at all? I'm an ISA, so it's coming from an ISA's perspective here, but can you get some specific as to why it is unique other than the ways it can go sideways that I've heard you refer to?
Yeah, a lot of the things we've talked about on this call. It's if you hit title issues or will disputes, there's a lot of things that can kick these things sideways. But it's has that agent ever worked with a probate attorney? Do they know how the probate process works in that market? Are they going to be in the way, or are they going to be driving the process? Those are all questions I would highlight, as long as you can, as long as you're in a good position to say, well, we can do this. And, think of the things that you're a typical agent in the family. The average real estate agent, I think, in the last NAR study, does about 9 deals a year. So in having that little exposure to the marketplace, assuming they're average, maybe they're better, but, what have they not thought about? It's just having a license and being in the family doesn't necessarily make you the most qualified to handle that listing.
Right.
So I would try to, let them, show them that you understand the process, you have worked with probate attorneys, and you can, if anything does go sideways, you've got the right people on board. Personal property is oftentimes a big thing that, if they don't have a relationship with the right estate sale company, they can leave money on the table, or they can hire the wrong company altogether, and it can be a catastrophe. If the work needs to be done, finding a credible contractor who shows up and does what they promise, that in itself is a huge challenge. Everybody knows 17 contractors, but finding one that you can trust and doesn't have to be babysat, that's a challenge. So those are all things that, team members, you can pull from the credibility of your team members to compete against realtors, because it's not likely they're going to have a well-assembled team like you do that can really service the situation the way you can.
I had a trial. I had a test trial run yesterday on the trust property that I was referred to yesterday, and we were talking about. It's in an estate. It's not in probate, and he did a test run on me with an estate seller that I will not do business with, and he said, "Well, are you going to use John Doe?" And I said, "No, I've got several others that I would rather use," and I named them off, and I said, "But as we go through this, I'll be glad to help you with that and get this lined up for you and coordinate the introductions." They do a great job helping out with picking out the properties that will be done, having an estate sale on the property. at the time that it is listed, brings in additional buyers during that, and it can be with a listing agreement before it's put on the MLS, or it's on the MLS and doing that and showing up with at the estate sale. And that's a huge help for the executors and personal representatives in being able to coordinate that and being able to be assured that there's going to be perhaps be a quick sale involved in that. Likewise, as Chad has said, having reliable contractors and clean-out crews and a covey of donation teams that will come to and pick up everything that's left after the estate sale. That just relieves the tension for the personal representatives and the executors.
Excellent. We have 3 more people in the queue. Did we answer all your questions?
You did. Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
All right. Hey, thanks. You're always willing to participate. We appreciate it.
Hey, this is Gary, and I've got to go. Get ready.
All right. Go get to court and win your case. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you participating. All right. Take care.
Gary.
Up next is phone number ending in 4100. You're up next.
It's Gail in Menlo Park, California. I was going to ask Gary what package he was talking about. He said bring 2 packages, one of a tough deal, one of an average deal. What did he want to include in that package?
Well, I would think, just kind of a brief, I would imagine, a picture of the house and just a brief summary of what you did and what made it a tough transaction or what made it an average transaction. So maybe the specs of the home, the list price, the days on market. And I'm kind of speaking for him here, but what he said is what's important to him is that the homes get sold for market value or above, right? They get the most amount of money out of them. So I would look at the amount of time it took you and the amount of money you were able to get for the family and just kind of make a 1-page brief for that house. So 123 Walnut Street, here's a picture, here's the listing photo. Here's the specs on the house. Here's what we listed it for. Here's what we sold it for. Here's the date it closed, and that's really what they're looking for. Something simple that just says this was, and maybe the specs for the estate too. So there were 1 executor, 2 siblings. There was a will or there was not a will, and then anything that might have happened if there were any title issues. Just kind of brief that out in bullet points. And I think that, something they can digest really quickly to understand what you did to be valuable in the transaction.
Awesome.
And I was going to share, Chad. I'm sure there's people on the call that haven't done any probates or haven't had that situation. And any situation in your real estate career where you had a very difficult deal and you jumped in and because title companies are great, attorneys are great, but the cooperation between the agent and the title company or the attorney can make or break a deal. So,
right.
Even if it's not probate specific, some issue where you were able to jump in and save the day that could happen on any transaction. We've all had those. Some creative solution. Let them know you think outside the box and maybe something that wasn't even your job where maybe, there was something that a lot, as an agent for 40 years, there's things that I did that were probably the title company's job, but if I hadn't done it, it wasn't going to get closed. So
right.
Anywhere you went above and beyond or you stepped out, outside, the normal comfort zone of a realtor and got results is a good story. And if it's a testimonial from your seller that, hey, look what she did that nobody else is willing to do, that's, that much better. But it doesn't have to be probate specific is my point.
Yeah, and we teach you to learn as much as you can about your local probate process. That's more for your own comfort level. The attorney is going to know and do most of that. And just what Jim said, what they're looking for is what makes this realtor different than any others. So look at a tough deal where you had to become a transaction engineer and you created value out of thin air or came up with an idea that made somebody more money. Those are the deals you want to highlight because what they're really looking at is how you do business on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to be a probate expert. They are.
I have a quick example of that that I had in an issue. had a property for sale. It was a referral in a divorce. The house was going to be sold and the proceeds split. I did all of the stuff that I normally do with the probate, and the first buyer wanted a survey of a lot in a subdivision. It turned out that the house was built 4 inches over the property line, and what I wound up going, I go to the attorney and I said, this is distressing, and what we wound up doing is get another survey, get the next door neighbor to give up 4 inches of their property, and we had to move a fence, and I got it to closing. At closing, that attorney firm now is just including me on a lot of other stuff that they're doing, and they're asking me questions about real estate and how to do that. Even though they may have a pretty good idea, they don't know how to. They don't know the engineer that'll go out there to do that and move a property line, get it filed with the city, and so on and so forth. So I did all of that for that one deal.
Perfect example. Great success. That's awesome. All right. Well, we have 2 more in the queue. Let's see who's up next. Phone number ending in 7884. You're up next.
Yes, Joe from Southern California, Rancho Cucamonga. Just a comment I wanted to indicate when you're talking to attorneys, your value added or how to stand out is, I tell them things like, well, I'm going to review the preliminary title report, make sure there's no issues that we need to know and address ahead of time. Follow the case online so we know the documents are being submitted to court, when the next hearing is, so that way it's less phone calls the attorney has to call me on. Backup valuations if the referee's been out. Is a home have proper insurance of being vacant property now, as opposed to when it was occupied? Then maybe we can go out and see how secure the property is and give an opinion of the security, those kind of things.
You just mentioned something to Chad. I've heard Chad on our role play calls, when a homeowner or when an heir says, well, my attorney's got it handled, Chad has said before, oh, really, I'm curious, have you switched do you have insurance in effect that covers a vacant house? And, just be quiet, ask that question. A lot of these people, you're right, they're not insured and they don't know it. So if you're helping the attorney with that situation to rectify it, or you're making the heir aware of something that they weren't aware of that their attorney didn't mention, that works equally well no matter who you're talking to. Just show them you have that extra level of expertise, and that's great. Good suggestion.
Yeah.
And have an insurance agent that has vacant underwriters too.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Not always easy. The other thing is that if the executor has a huge responsibility, and I think we need to remind them of how that is, so that when you bring these safety items to them or reducing liability to the estate, then I think they feel better about that, and then they look at you as a comfort area. Yep.
Well said.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions or anything specific we can help you with?
Yes, the fix versus repair. The majority of the attorneys I've been talking to like the as-is to reduce any liabilities to the estate. But there's a couple attorneys out there that would rather have it repaired, and they indicate, a higher sales price. So, what if a contractor hurts himself on the property? That doesn't always go good, with the risk factor.
Well, I think it's important to have the right contractors. One of the things that before we ever recommend a contractor, I get every quarter, I get letters from my contractors' insurance companies with proof of insurance. They put me on their policy as additional insured. So, every quarter when their policy renews, I get a letter from State Farm saying, hey, this contractor is still insured, and I throw it in the file. So I know that they've got $1 million in a blanket policy, well, most of them are $2 million. Yeah. So you just have to make sure you're putting the right people on the job, right? And that's what we caution people. Be careful with clean-out crews and guys you find on Craigslist, because what happens, if you put them in that position, who's liable?
Yeah. Right.
But having good contractors, if your contractors proof up, if they're licensed and insured, there's not much liability there for you or the homeowner, and you can create a ton of value for the estate.
Oh, okay. I never would have thought about additional insured. That's great.
All right. Well,
Okay,
I appreciate it. Anything else? All right. You're very welcome.
It.
We have one more person in the queue, and we do have room for more. Just hit *6 and then hit 1 if you would like to participate. And next up is phone number ending in 3860. You're up.
Yes, good morning. This is Rosa Gomes from Honolulu, Hawaii.
Aloha, Rosa.
Aloha. I have a referral. I have a prior secretary from our RE/MAX office whose grandmother has passed away in trust, and she's in Southern California in the Victorville area. So I have a referral for somebody, if there's somebody on the call who works that area. The house is full of furniture, and there might be one of the cousins living on the property. Basically, will have to be evicted. So is there
excellent? Now, as soon as you said that, someone went into the queue, and if it's Belinda went in the queue, and if she's in that area, I can't think of anybody better. But also, Rosa, would you please send an email to support at all the leads? Just make sure that tell us exactly again where the area is, and if anybody on the call wants to step forward or wants to send an email to support, we'll make sure we hook you up. I think that's a great use of this. And also, you can go on our Facebook group, All the Leads Mastermind, and ask the question. But I suspect we've got about 100 people on today's call. I suspect someone will probably respond. So okay. I appreciate it. And welcome, Rosa. You're just getting started, right?
Yeah, I haven't even gotten started. I'm
okay.
into it already.
Well, great.
I have had some experience with probates. I did my own mother's, and I've done a couple of others since then, mother-in-law and a few others. Plus, I've sold some properties that were in probate. So.
And don't be afraid to share those personal experiences. What's that?
I said, I guess I'm headed that direction. I'm a property manager, so I have a full team. So it's kind of
awesome.
A shoe-in at that point. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, please, I've got your name and number, but send us that email anyway, and I'm sure we'll find you. We'll have no trouble finding you someone in California if they don't speak up on this call. Okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. We have a frequent participant, always has something brilliant to say. Belinda, you're up next.
Well, I don't know about brilliance. I got a quick question to ask you, kind of a continuation of last week. Remember, I mentioned that there was a property that had two houses on one lot, one tax record. So I did meet with the client, and they don't want to subdivide the land. But the question is this. In doing the interview, I went through the property, did a video of it because they had the tenant there that wasn't necessarily cooperating, but he was cooperating that day. So I did a video of it and then put together the listing information and went through the documentation with the actual PR, and then she wanted to include her sister, so I tuned them in, and we were doing this over the phone the following day after I arrived at a price point. And so we went through, answered all these questions and everything. So I get a call back the next day or a text message saying, well, we want to wait for a week. We want to deal with the tenant, we want to do this and do that, which I immediately sensed was a stall. So I just asked her to call me. They called me, and in essence what they want to do is they were asking questions like, well, we got 4 investors, and they're making offers, they're pending, and, how much do we have to pay you if you're involved and this and that. So apparently the investors have chirped in their ears about, well, you can get around the agent's fee, and they don't want to do the deal if any agents are involved. And I told her, I said, of course they don't want an agent involved, because then you won't get full exposure of the property to the market, and that's what's going to drive the price up. So my question to you all, though, is this. I forwarded that video to the attorney, and this was an attorney lead that I dealt with maybe a year or so ago, and forwarded the video to the PR, her sister, and then the documentation to be reviewed by the sister of the PR's husband, okay? So I'm providing all this value add, okay? And the question is this, though. I mean, how much value do you present to a client before you kind of get them into a listing agreement or some agreement that kind of ensures that, you're not working for nothing?
Yeah, great question.
So and we're all different personalities here. I think you've provided enough value. It's time for a real candid conversation, in my opinion. And it would go something like, okay, so what we're talking about is the equity in the estate and a family member of yours that's life is going to be affected by this. So would you rather them take the equity and me not make any money, and then they're going to go through the legal channels and oust one of your family members and potentially make them homeless? Or would you rather me find somebody who's willing to pay you the equity and we can make this a controlled life transition for your family member? Because if you're just going to shop me around against investors, and it's more important for you to just find something that's comfortable this week than to do this the right way, then I'm going to go the other way. If you want me to get that equity for you, I'll put a plan together, I'll execute it, and I brought a listing agreement. But we've got to commit to some dates, because I need to know when this is going on MLS. And I've committed to you guys. I've given you a lot of time. When can we do this? So is the equity yours, or are you going to give it to the investors?
May I also make
a suggestion? This is that second scenario, but still what you've given me still applies to the case where the tenant is. In this case, this is the one where the tenant is not related to them, but he's just kind of being resistant to moving and things like that. But the information you've given me, I can still apply to, and I pretty much had I was really angry when she told me to ask you, but I said, so essentially what you all have done is to ask me to come out to the property, give you a base point as to what you should be asking for, and then shop it around. And I bit my tongue after that because it was a referral coming from an attorney that I've dealt with before, and I didn't want to have a confrontational thing, but I did want her to know that I realized that the only thing they were doing was pretty much using me to get a price point, because they didn't know what to even think about to ask for or to accept from someone. And then I just told her essentially just, at the end of the week, call me back if you want me to list the home,
Yeah, I mean, it's time for the takeaway. If they sell to an investor, you know damn well they're going to sell for less money than your commission and, minus what you would have sold it for. Their net figure is going to be higher. So unless there's an urgent situation that requires them to do that, and if you feel like it's in their best interest, give them the takeaway.
Okay. My suggestion.
And be stern about it. You're really nice and soft spoken. They're wasting your damn time. So be stern.
Yeah. Okay.
Mention the magic word, multiple offers.
And I told them that. And my thinking was that, well, maybe they're thinking, maybe I told them too much about how, I can turn it into like an auction situation. Maybe they figure, oh, we can do that. We have 4 investors. All we got to do is open it up one day and tell everybody to come at the same time, or something similar to what I can.
But how many investors are there? If you count up all the real estate agents and the 4 investors that each of them have, how many can you expose it to with one day on the MLS?
Yeah, and see that's the thing. They don't know that they don't sell real estate, and I'm trying to let them know that, look, these people are not going to give you the best. There's no way you get the best price. It's just no way you're going to do it doing it that way.
If they had a really urgent situation where they had to have the money, then my answer would be completely different. Right.
They don't. They just don't want to be bothered with it. So they don't really have an urgent matter. As a matter of fact, they were going to wait for a while because they wanted. I was telling them it'd be better if we get the tenant out. So other than the fact they just don't want to be bothered with the property anymore because it's in, great disrepair. They say investor property is an experienced investor property, So, but they don't have any very, like we got to have the money today because, somebody has to have surgery or something. So, no.
What do you feel confident you could sell it for in a week?
170.
What was her highest offer?
2 properties in a garage.
What was her highest offer?
She couldn't tell me because when she initially called me, one of the investors he backed out because he said the actual tenant that was there is a teacher at the school his son goes to. And then I asked her about the other one, and she didn't give me an answer on that. So when she said she had 4, I didn't ask her about what they actually offered her at that point. But she had my net sheet from the 170 that I told her we would start at. And really, I think it would go above that if we actually put it out there in the market, and I have more of an auction-like scenario where we have the investors come at very specific times, say within a 3-hour window. And,
so do you feel like all the guidance you've given her and all the time you spent on analysis, don't you feel like you deserve to know what those offers are?
Well, yeah, that's true too. And
okay,
then
so if those offers are below, if you get that information and those offers are below $170,000, and you can show them how you can get $170,000 in a week, and that as long as your commission's covered in that, then why would they not?
Yeah, I mean their net would be like I think 157 because there is an issue of a tax lien which may or may not have to come from the proceeds. But since it's paid for in full, it doesn't really matter because that's just all of it's gravy for them. They didn't put anything into the house. This is something that just kind of didn't fall in their lap. I mean, it was their dad's property, but it's paid for in full. So whatever they get, they get. So that's
what your next conversation needs to be about. Let's forget the sales price. Let's talk about the net. What was the best offer you got? Okay, what was the next best one? Okay, so I'm telling you I can do this in a week for $170. My commission is X. That net number is higher. So I can take away a lot of the liability, the responsibility, the work, and I can make you more money. What are we talking about here?
Okay.
Get tough, Belinda. You, and as always, it seems like I compliment you every week for a part-time realtor who has a full-time job, who is brand new to probate. You are killing it. It's just the fact that you come with these questions every week tells me that you're out there working. So congratulations, and I know you're having successes. And if you ever need help with these things off the call too, and that goes for everybody, just send an email to support@alltheleads, and we'll get back to you, between calls.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, one and all. Thank you to Gary, Roger. Thank you for bringing them. Thank you to everybody that took the time to be here today. Thank you to the people that participated. And I promise you, no matter what the hurricane does, we'll all be here next Thursday. So, as always, I want to challenge you to take one idea, one thought, one thing you heard on today's call, go out and put it into practice, and come back next Thursday and share it with the group. Make it a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you same time next Thursday. Take care.